A long time ago, I raised a son to know his Raimi from his Russos.
Now, we're turning our arguments into content. This is I Am Your Father, where Gen X meets Gen Z in hyperspace.
Hello. Another episode of I Am Your Father, the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. How you doing, Pops?
I am doing well, young Padawan. I'm doing very well. How about you? You got you're sporting your heritage there?
Yeah, Scotland. Got it in Scotland.
There you go.
Believe it or not.
Got it in Scotland. I do believe it.
Yeah. How you been this week? Busy?
Good. It's been a busy week, but it's been a good week for our stuff, the stuff we like to talk about.
Yeah.
And I have an Invincible update for you. Season 2 in the books for me.
Finished season 2. All right.
I did. Yeah. I'm still enjoying it. They literally figured out how to up the decapitation count in season 2 over season 1.
Yeah.
I think literally in one scene there's like 12 decapitations in 10 seconds.
Yep.
But I am really still enjoying it quite a bit, and I appreciate the recommendation. And I do think it's kind of funny the way that they started to in sort of like tease a little Marvel and a little DC. Like multiversal scenarios toward the end.
Right.
So yeah, all in all, enjoying the show.
Yeah, that little multiverse tease is actually in the comics. So it's not something it just happened to line up with the whole multiverse storytelling that's happening right now. But where would you rank it next to season 1? Kind of similar?
Yeah, I think I liked season 2 a little bit better, to be honest. I feel as if the characters got better arcs. I was more interested in them. The stakes felt higher. Of course, in the end, all of our heroes that died came back, and so the stakes turned out to not be. They turned out to be artificial in some ways, but I still really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I would agree. That's actually a hot take. Most people have season 1 ranked at number 1, and if I'm being honest, I think they get better with each season.
Well, I'm excited to start season 3. What about the movie that came in between? What are your thoughts on that?
The Adam Eve special?
Yeah.
Did you watch it?
Not yet. I was going to do that next and then season 3.
Yeah. I enjoy it quite a bit. I mean, it's not absolutely necessary, but Eve does become much more important in the 3rd season, so it's nice to have. And I actually think it's really good. Kind of gives you a little peek into just how powerful and important she actually is, and how important she likely will be to the rest of this story. So I think it's really good, actually.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into our first segment. It is time for the 10 in 20. This is a segment where we tackle 10 topics in 2 minutes apiece. Try and hold ourselves to the timer and see how many people we can annoy with our opinions.
Let's get into it.
All right, topic number 1. The Last of Us Season 2 premieres to somewhat mixed reviews, but I personally loved it. What do you think?
I have not heard any of these mixed reviews. In fact, strangely, I haven't heard any reviews now that I think about it. But I watched it, and man, do I love it. I thought Season 1 was really great. There are some issues here and there that I have with it. And I think overall, this first episode of Season 2 kind of just took me right back into it, got me excited, reminded me the quality of television that we're in store for. And I think Pedro Pascal is putting on just one of my favorite performances recently. I think I absolutely love this character, Joel, and I'm excited to see where the season goes.
Yeah, so to address the reviews, I noticed a few reviews popping up that suggested that it just didn't quite have the same magic as Season 1 did. And these are people that had seen more than one episode, so they've got early screeners. So that part concerns me a little bit to see what happens beyond. But I thought that the opening episode, that the premiere of Season 2 was fantastic, and I really enjoyed it. I thought Pedro was great. I will say that I found myself, having played the games, I was nervous about Caitlin Dever as Abby, but in the opening sequence, I really was like, okay, yeah, I got her. I totally buy her. If anything, I was a little more concerned about. I'm still concerned about Bella Ramsey a little bit. I still struggle with her as Ellie, but I don't think she's doing a bad job. It's just not the way I think of Ellie in my head.
Yeah, as someone who hasn't played the games and kind of seen all this debate from the outside, I would agree that with no history with Abby, that she did a great job right away. I bought it completely. And in fact, I'm quite nervous. But then I would agree with Bella Ramsey's casting. I think she is doing a great job acting-wise, but again, similar just from what I've seen, like the clips I've seen from the game and stuff like that, I'm not sure that I fully buy it yet either, but
Yeah.
we'll see. All right.
Topic number 2,
Yeah.
Daredevil, season finale of Daredevil Reborn. What do you got?
I loved it. As a whole, I would say this is easily a top 3 MCU show. And you could debate about it being a number 1, but I don't think I would have it there myself. I think I would still put Loki above it. And I think part of the reason this is the case is it does feel pretty clear to me that there were a few rewrites and reshoots and stuff like that happening. Like there were 2 stories that they tried to combine into one for this season. And a little bit of the behind the scenes, in case you don't know, is they started to shoot this show. The actors were like, hey, this is not working. So they brought in these writers. They rewrote the first 7th and 8th, or first 8th and 9th, whatever. They rewrote a few of the episodes to connect to the original series more. And I think all 3 of those were my favorite episodes. I think these last 2 episodes were really great. Really exciting. Anytime seeing Punisher and Daredevil on screen together, it's just magic. John Bernthal as Punisher, as you know, is one of my favorite castings of all time. So I really loved it. It wasn't perfect, but I really loved it.
I enjoyed it too. Also, I'm glad we're talking about the same show because I inadvertently renamed it as Born Again instead of Reborn. So I don't know if you're ready for the Daredevil becomes converted and a gospel preacher.
Well, it is Born
That
Again.
would be. No, I said Reborn.
Oh, did you?
So yeah.
Reborn.
And I think because in my head I got the Born Again thing and I just like reversed it in my head.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Sorry. So yeah, it is Born Again, not Reborn. The stuff with the Punisher was maybe my favorite stuff of the whole season.
It's
I
so
really
good.
enjoyed Bernthal coming back. I didn't realize how much I loved him in that part, but I enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to season 2.
Yeah, for me, everything having to do with the previous characters from previous seasons, so Bullseye and Fisk, obviously, I thought was really great. And I actually think the weaker point of the show was this other villain that they introduced and in marketing really played up to be a huge deal. And in comics is a really huge deal, that being Muse, the serial killer. Right off the bat, they didn't give him the abilities in the comics that make him an interesting adversary for Daredevil, being that Daredevil actually can't sense him, which is interesting right off the bat. And on top of that, he's way more gruesome in the comics, which is interesting. And so I feel like they built him up and they kind of just wrapped him up in maybe 1.5 episodes. And that was a little confusing to me.
He wasn't exactly kind in the show.
No.
But I thought that the way that they managed his mask and his persona, I was definitely intrigued and wanted more. But it also did feel somewhat anticlimactic when his story was tied up with still 2 or 3 more episodes to go.
Exactly. Yeah. Additionally, we have an official release for season 2 being in March of next year. And the showrunners have said that with that one coming out next year, they'll start filming another one immediately. So season 3 being greenlit and hopefully keep making seasons, I guess, releasing one per year. This both excites me and makes me a little nervous. I don't want it to go on forever. A good thing's got to end eventually, but I'm excited to get more Daredevil, and I'm definitely excited to get more Punisher teaming up with Daredevil.
So you would have been okay if this was a limited series, one and done?
No, I think I would want it to. The way it ended, definitely not. It needs to keep going.
Yeah.
But I'm saying the prospect of them saying we have 3 seasons planned, and we just want to keep going after that. That makes me a little nervous.
All right, we are out of time and ready for our next topic. Take it away.
Thunderbolts with an asterisk. My main question for you is, what do you think that asterisk means? This movie's coming out here in, I think, about 2 weeks. I have tickets to see it opening night. Maybe one day we'll get to go to a premiere or something like that.
One day.
That's the dream. But do you have any predictions on maybe A, who's going to die in this movie, and B, what this asterisk in the title might be referencing?
the way I've been reading the asterisks is a bit like tongue in cheek, like, you know, they're not really connected to Thunderbolt Ross. They're not. They took their. I don't know. Like somehow adding a level of irony to it, which seems to align with the tone of the film that we've been seeing, and works for me. So I haven't overthought it, but in my head I was just like, oh, that's kind of cute, nice little touch. You know, just reminding us that they're in on the joke.
Yeah, I have a theory that similar to the way that the Falcon and the Winter Soldier ended with the title card Captain America and the Winter Soldier. I have a feeling that this movie might close out with a different team name title, whether that be, you know, the Dark Avengers or something a little cooler than that. I'm not sure, but that's my personal theory. And then I do pose one more question to you. Do you think this movie will make $1 billion at the box office?
I'm kind of going to say no. I don't think it will. I think it's going to fall short. But I will say that it's the first in quite a long time that is going to get my money in the theaters from Marvel. I've been in the, okay, I'll wait for it to come out on VOD for the last several. But I want to be there as well, if not opening night, opening weekend, and jump in and see that. So maybe if more people are like me, we'll get there. But I have trouble believing that we're going to get there.
I don't think it will either. I don't know that it has the draw that maybe an Avengers or a Spider-Man movie has, but I do think it's going to be really good. I really hope it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, that takes us to the conversation of another debut. Sinners is going to be releasing this weekend and has already got some really great reviews. In fact, it's got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes right now. Are you going to be watching this opening weekend?
I definitely hope to. I need to look at some times and see if I can make it there, but I really want to see this movie, and I think it's sneakily one of my most anticipated movies of the year. I like Ryan Coogler's stuff. I haven't seen all of it, but everything I've seen I've liked for the most part, and the trailers just have some sauce, you know? They look real good. Michael B. Jordan playing two characters. I always like that trope. I think it's a little fun, and I love vampires, so I think it's going to be a pretty cool movie. I'm pretty excited to get there, and these reviews are only making me more excited. Yeah.
One of the things I really am anticipating enjoying about this is I don't have a lot of baggage with too many people in this cast. Obviously, Michael B. Jordan is Michael B. Jordan, and he's become his own thing. But I like him. I'm ready to sign up for more of him. Yeah. And we've got Haley Steinfeld. But outside of that, and a little bit of Delroy Lindo, who I don't think you probably don't have a ton of history with Delroy Lindo. He's not performing as much as he used to. But outside of that, there's just not a lot where I'm like, okay, I got to figure out how to buy that person in that part or buy that person. I feel like I'm going to come in and have a fairly open perspective on all of the performances, and I'm excited about that. I'm also really excited to see what Coogler and Michael B. Jordan do in this case. This is their fifth collaboration or something along those lines?
Something like that.
Yeah. So I am looking at probably Friday night or Saturday morning. I'm going to be in the theater, and I'm going to be watching this. And maybe one of your sisters is going to join me. So we'll see what happens.
Sounds good. All right. Moving on, we have an Oceans prequel in the works with Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling. Does this franchise need to keep going?
I'm going to say no. I don't need this. In fact, when I read the log line of this film, I don't know why it has to be connected to the Oceans franchise in any way at all. I think it works independently. I think the reason that we're connecting this to the Oceans franchise at all is because the studios feel like they have to have some kind of IP in order to make it work. But sign me, like Margot Robbie, Ryan Gosling in a heist film set in 1940s Europe, or I'm in. Let's go to Monte Carlo. Let's see that. I want to see a classic Hitchcockian thriller, or maybe it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek heist film. I'm down for any of that. I don't need it to be connected to the Oceans franchise personally.
I don't know why it is. Like you just mentioned, two A-list celebrities in this movie with an amazing setting and theme. It's like, I don't know why it needs to be connected. I love the Oceans movies, so I'm not like sitting here super upset about it. But again, I don't know that the Oceans in the title is super necessary. I think it could have just been a really fun heist movie with these two amazing actors.
Okay, but when you say you love the Oceans movies, are we talking about the Soderbergh films? Are we talking about the George Clooney specifically films?
Yeah, I mean, I saw 8 and I liked it, but I didn't love it. Some of the, the reveals felt like they were trying too hard and they felt very underwhelming. But I really like both 11 and 13. I also like 12. 13 is kind of a guilty pleasure. I know it's not as good, but I still enjoy it. I
kind of like it more than 12.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So if I'm rewatching them, I'm watching 11 and 13, and then I'm turning it off. So,
yeah, I also enjoyed 8. It felt like though it was forced into the franchise rather than just a great film with a really good cast and that we want to, who are involved in a heist and we want to watch them.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Moving on, we have a new Matrix film in the works, Matrix 5. No details beyond that, I don't think, at least. Again, I'll pose the same question. Should this franchise just die? Do they need to keep making these movies? And do they just keep getting worse with each entry?
I mean, the reality is yes. I mean, with each consecutive film, the quality has degraded to an extent. Now, I personally really like 2 and 3. And I will argue pretty vehemently when somebody says that they're trash. And are they as good as the first? No, they are not. But I think they're both really solid, and I enjoy watching them. And there are parts of 2 particularly that I really love. But also in 3, when we get to the follow-up that came out several years later, it also didn't so much work for me. Did I want to go back and revisit that universe? I did, but in hindsight, it was like, having that plate of seconds that you really didn't need.
Yeah.
Afterwards, I felt a little sick.
Yeah, I would agree. 1 is a perfect film. And I think 2 is a really great follow-up, even though it gets a lot of hate. I kind of disagree. I think 3 has quite a big drop-off. I have a little harder time getting through 3. But 4, I mean, I have to say, it was a better trailer than it was a movie. When I saw that trailer, I was like, this looks awesome. And then that movie was hot garbage. And there's just too much of Keanu Reeves using force pushes in that movie, and a story that feels way too forced, way too meta, and just not interesting enough to justify its own existence.
Yeah. I don't need to see more of it, to be honest. I kind of wish that they would move on, but I'll be happy to be proven wrong if they can pull it off.
I hope they prove us wrong. I hope they do.
Yeah. All right, that takes us into an updated category that has been being talked about at the Oscars. They're going to be adding in Best Stunt in the 100th Oscars. Why'd this take so long, do you think?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know that the Oscars has had their finger on the pulse of the everyday person for who knows how long. I mean, every single year, I feel like there's much more rage focused at the Oscars than anything else, just at their lack of awareness. I think this should have been a thing a long time ago, and I think maybe one day we can do a list of all the movies that should have won in the last 10 years or something like that. But this is absolutely an area of filmmaking that needs to be recognized and celebrated. I mean, it makes a movie if there's action in a movie, it has to be good. Those stuntmen and stunt coordinators and directors, they have to be at the top of their field, and so they definitely deserve recognition, because there's nothing worse than watching an action movie and watching and being like, "Ooh, that wasn't too good," or "Ooh, spotted the stunt guy there,"
Yeah, for sure. I think it's key. I think it's a no-brainer that they recognize this in terms of why it's taken so long. I think they've consistently shown, despite all of the musings among the people up on the stage about getting back into theaters and supporting cinema in theaters and all this kind of stuff, they also continue, as you said, to not have their finger on the pulse of things, and they talk about all the people that help make these movies possible, all the below the line individuals, but then they squeeze those categories in during commercials, or they do them on different nights or things like that. They don't really recognize, and they're under a lot of pressure to solve the production and to keep it moving and to keep people interested. But I think one of the ways that they do that is by recognizing films that people care about, and not just films that are Academy worthy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know anybody who saw The Brutalist or A Complete Unknown, if I'm being super honest. I haven't even seen them myself, and that's just 2 off the top of my head. I mean, it is usually full of movies that nobody has seen, and then oftentimes full of movies that people will watch because they're nominated and then be like, I didn't love that. So
Yeah.
I think they definitely need to do a little reworking of how they do things. I mean, that'll be another list for us one day. The movies that should have won Best Picture, the movies that are actually cemented in pop culture and everybody's memories, rather than the movies that won that nobody's heard of today.
I mean, listen, we're almost a minute over time on this particular topic, but I think it's worth saying. Like, it's okay that if the Oscars want to focus on artistic achievement rather than commercial achievement, that's fine. I mean, there's a place for that, and I'm down for it. But I think the problem is that they seem to want to say that they're representing one thing and then actually represent something else, and so that's where my confusion comes in.
You're absolutely
I'm
right.
down for the Criterion Collection, for example, that really focuses on high art in cinema, but they also recognize that high art can come from science fiction, it can come from drama, it can come from suspense, it can come from horror. I think that the Oscars seem to want to have their cake and eat it too.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're over time, but just one great example of that is Oppenheimer being the first movie that Nolan gets any recognition for.
Yeah, and we talked about that too in the previous episode about it being a make good. The fact that the Oscars have to do so many make goods over
Defeats
the years,
the whole
and we have
purpose.
so many examples of that, where it's like, well, this person won for this movie, but really it was kind of a make good for that movie 3 years before that they should have won for, or for the body of work that they've had for the last 10 years. So I agree with you, and I'm finalizing the structure for our rewards episode, and I think we'll get that going pretty soon.
Yeah.
Okay, but we've cut deep into time for a topic that I'm extremely excited about. Andor Season 2 is back, right? And I'm super pumped. You mentioned before some stuff that you were most excited about this year. This is for me. This is the one for me. I am maybe most excited for Andor Season 2 over anything else. Do you share my excitement, son?
I think I do. I've only seen season 1 the one time, but I have to say it's some of the best Star Wars we've ever seen. It is a slow burn, but it builds so well. And by the end of that show, just the dialogue is getting me ready to jump up and down and go fight in the rebellion with Star Wars. And it's ridiculous. I love the show. I think it's phenomenal. I'm very excited for season 2. I wish we were getting a season 3 also, but I'll take what I can get.
Yeah. I mean, I've said this to you many times. I will say it officially for the podcast. This is my favorite Star Wars since the original trilogy. I really love everything that Tony Gilroy has brought to it, but most importantly, what I appreciate that he's brought is maturity. I think that this is Star Wars for adults. There's a lot of feedback out there of people who want to hate on us Gen Xers who are like, oh, the original trilogies, and people will be like, you're just mad because you didn't age with the franchise. Thank you, Freddie Prinze Jr. And other things. But the reality is that we have aged. We have aged. Even your generation has aged through Star Wars. I don't appreciate things that are designed for 10-year-old children anymore. The same way that I do this. That is same way I appreciate something that is designed for someone my age that has loved the franchise for as long as we have. I think what's great about Andor is that it rewards thought. It rewards reflection. It rewards. It rewards paying attention to it and really thinking about it. It's not about fan theory. It's not about fan casting. It's not about just coming back and saying, like, how can we manipulate the audience to be excited about this? Instead, it's just like unapologetically a really great show that happens to be set in the Star Wars universe. That's almost less important to Andor than anything else.
Yeah, and mind you, it does all this without any lightsabers or even the Force.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that. I love lightsabers. I love the Jedis. I love the Skywalkers. But I am totally cool with this vision of what the Star Wars universe could be away from that world. We'll see. I'm really hoping that we don't find lightsabers in this season. I'm hoping that they hold on to that promise that they metaphorically made to us, you know?
Yeah, I'd agree. All right, I'll take us into our last topic.
Let's do it.
We'll just run through it quickly. Spider-Man Brand New Day will reportedly take place simultaneously with Avengers Doomsday. So my question is he actually not going to appear in Doomsday?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. It's almost as if they're indicating that, right? We have some examples already of where the Spider-Man films, as great as they've been, have kind of like straddled the rest of the timeline in an interesting way. Like we went backwards once. But I it feels like it's just because they're keeping these two franchises a little bit separate. I'm hoping that he is in Doomsday, but maybe not, especially if it's done simultaneously. Well, how did you read that? As like literally taking place at the exact same time, like they know what's happening in each other's films, or do you think it's they're suggesting that these will be happening simultaneously, so basically the characters don't realize what's happening in the other storyline?
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be the latter, similar to Ant-Man and the Wasp during Infinity War, where the only connection that happens is the post-credit scene. And then we find out that the events of the entire movie were taking place during, the Battle of Wakanda in Infinity War. It might be something like that. There's not a chance in hell that Spider-Man is not at least cameoing in a post-credit scene for this movie. In some ways, they're going to link it. There's too much story to be told with Spider-Man in Doomsday and Secret Wars for them to just say he's not going to be in it at all. I think his movie will push him towards that, just maybe in a different way than some of the other characters.
All right, and we've got the director of Shang-Chi, who appears to be attached to the Spider-Man film. I have only really seen his work in Shang-Chi. I've not gone down the rest of his filmography, but solid action, really solid action in Shang-Chi. Yeah. So I'm grateful to hear that that's going to be part of what we're seeing in Spider-Man.
Yeah, that's a lot of people's main complaint with Tom Holland's Spider-Man is that his action scenes and swinging scenes aren't Spider-Man enough. And so I think this might be a great opportunity for them to kind of prove everybody wrong moving forward. I think if there's one thing that this movie will provide, it's going to be some really great action, some really great acrobatics and visual storytelling.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess to me, the reason that those Tom Holland films work is not because of the action. It's because of the characters. It's because of the writing. And so luckily, I think that you don't need the action sequences to cover up a mediocre script,
right?
Uninteresting characters, underdeveloped characters. What we feel for Peter Parker, we feel for MJ, we feel for all the characters, and I think that that's what really makes them great. I've personally never watched it and went like, you know what, the action sucks. I need more action. I feel like the characters pull me in enough that I'm totally satisfied with the action.
Hopefully we get the best of both worlds in this next movie. Yeah. All right. Now let's move on to... Yeah, we did it. Let's move on to our main topic. Today we're going to be discussing and ranking Zack Snyder, one of our favorite directors. That puts us in...
How do you say his last name? Snyder.
Not Schneider. That puts us in a minority. He gets a lot of hate. I'm not aware of a director that actually gets more hate than Zack Snyder. And while I can empathize with some of it, I think most of it is completely unwarranted. And I will do my best to defend this man's work as long as he keeps making movies. So we're both pretty passionate about some of his movies, and I'm excited to dive into it with you.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's had some really successful films in my mind, successfully executed, and he's had some pretty bad ones in there as well. So yeah. While I am definitely a defender of some key films, 5 or 6 of his films, there are some more recent examples where I really was disappointed, and I kind of felt like, now I have to listen to more people complain about how bad he is because this wasn't good. But I think especially his early work was really fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just address the elephant in the room. His last 3 movies are all horrible, in my opinion. They are. I wanted to like Rebel Moon because it's Zack Snyder meets Star Wars, And, man, was that just hard to get through. And I don't even think I was remotely excited for the second part. I think I turned it on and struggled to get through it. So we can dive into it here in just a minute. But he is not on a hot streak.
We've both identified The Scargiver as our last place entry into his filmography,
which is Rebel Moon Part 2. Yeah,
and so we agree on that front. I also, by the time Scargiver came out, I was pretty uninterested. I watched it because I felt like I should see how it ends, but it never captured my imagination at all, and I found myself really frustrated consistently.
Which is sad that we live in a time right now where a Zack Snyder film is coming out and we're not excited. And the other thing about that too is he just was really trying to ride the wave of his director's cut thing being a success with Justice League. I remember that before part 1 even came out, they said, we're going to release part 1, then we're going to release part 2, and then we're going to release the director's cut of both of those movies, and it's going to be rated R, and it's going to be a hard rated R, and it's going to be much, much longer, much, much better. And I didn't even watch them. I just didn't. I had no interest.
The director's cuts.
In the director's cuts, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like he thought that what everybody really wanted to see was his director's cut, when in reality, that's not exactly what drove everybody towards loving and desiring the Snyder Cut of Justice League so much. I think he kind of misunderstood the assignment there.
Yeah. The director's cut works if it's correcting something that didn't work to begin with. I think when you plan into the director's cut, it becomes an issue. And you probably don't remember this, but in the 90s, there was a big movement toward director's cuts on DVD particularly. Yeah. And it was like every good or decent film was getting a director's cut release on DVD. And in most cases, you could barely tell what the difference was. It was like the director's cut has 30 extra seconds.
Yeah,
and it wasn't particularly good. But I think some early examples of director's cuts, like Alien, for example, or even Aliens, both those director's cuts had significant improvements. And then in a more modern time to your time frame, the Lord of the Rings director's cut films director's cut versions were also pretty significant, and from a certain perspective, improvements on something that was already good.
I mean, an additional hour to each of them, basically.
Yeah. I mean, and I almost don't know those movies without that version.
Right.
I don't watch anything but that version.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but yeah, I think when you're planning in, it feels more like kind of what started to happen in the 90s, where it was just a marketing gimmick. And that's why it existed. So I didn't watch it either, to be honest.
Yeah, and just going back to the Scargiver specifically, I actually don't think I could tell you one thing that happened in this movie, legitimately. I don't think I could name a character. I watched this movie and forgot it in T-1 day. It was really rough. I think it's hot garbage, and it pains me to say it. But the next few movies are also not very good at all. So I think we can hop up into our next film, which we also agree on, and that's Army of the Dead. That came out in 2021, I believe.
Yeah, and I was very pumped for this.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the zombie genre. I thought, zombies, Las Vegas, Zack Snyder.
Snyder.
And I did it again. Zack Snyder. And no, unfortunately, it was as bad as my pronunciation of his last name.
Yeah. Again, really great trailer. The trailer had me very excited. I was like, that looks like a blast. It's, again, right in a genre that I would really enjoy from a director that I really love, coming off of the Snyder Cut of Justice League. So coming off of one of my favorite movies of his. And man, again, that movie, I just kind of can't believe what I'm watching as I'm watching it. Like the dialogue, the acting, it is all so bad. Like you would think that it was somebody's first movie ever. It's a rough one. It's a hard watch. He sets up so many things. And again, in that movie, he set up a prequel. He set up an anime sequel. He was trying to set up a whole universe, and it just wasn't working. That one's a really rough one. And it has some of the worst performances I think I've ever seen.
From some otherwise good actors, though. And this opens up a whole can of worms with my thoughts on, say, the Star Wars prequels. The performers are ultimately only as good as the material.
Right.
And if they're given terrible material, they deliver terrible performances, even if they're incredibly talented actors. Now, I'm not sitting here trying to suggest that Dave Bautista is as good as Ewan McGregor in terms of an actor, or any number of other comparisons we could make here, but to those prequels. But this is a really great example to me of just a bad script and poorly constructed characters, poorly constructed dialogue, leaving otherwise good performers like Ella Purnell left with very little to do that we find interesting at all.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a real bummer. And then
I agree. I agree.
coincidentally, we have the same next slot as well, being the first Rebel Moon, Child of Fire.
Yeah.
Again, couldn't tell you much that happened in this movie except for a whole lot of slow-mo. And I
Well,
went
now
into
you
this
sound like a
movie-
Snyder hater.
No, I
with
know.
all with the slow-mo hate.
I really do. And I'm not. I went into this movie wanting to love it so bad. Again, it's Zack Snyder meets Star Wars. That's two of my favorite things right there. And instead of it being the best thing ever, it was just pretty much the worst thing ever. All my fears had come true, and it just wasn't a good movie at all.
I think that it was hubris, I have to say. When you put together a spec script for Star Wars, for some divergence within that universe, and say, hey, guys, I've got this ready to go. I've got this fantastic idea. It's going to be great. And then they ultimately can it, and they say, no, we don't like it. We're not going to do it. I think it's hubris to sit back and say that you can then just transition that into your own world building, and for it to have the same gravity with viewers that it would have had it been within Star Wars. And so I think it's missing that. It's missing that soul that it could have had it been somehow connected to Star Wars. Now, I'm glad it's not. I'm glad it's not connected to Star Wars in any way. But I think it was absolutely hubris to assume that he could convert it over in that time period and that he could build this like overnight franchise. That's what it feels like to me. It feels like starting a new franchise and having, I can't open the McDonald's on this corner, so I'm just going to make my own fast food restaurant that's going to be every bit as recognizable as as those Big Macs and Quarter Pounders. And except, oops, it's not, because there are decades and decades of brand awareness and passion for that brand, and you just can't manufacture that overnight.
Yeah, I completely agree. I loathe these three movies, if I'm just being completely honest. And it sucks because they're his three most recent movies. So he has just been on an absolute bend of crap. And I'm hoping that we hit the reset button with his upcoming film and maybe get back to what used to make his movies good. But I'm just afraid that maybe his head might be too big these days.
Yeah. And he does have quite a bit in the pipeline right now, which is crazy, including an Army of the Dead show that's supposedly coming out, a TV series. He's got another one called Twilight of the Gods that's coming out. He's got a Planet of the Dead film that is I guess a build off of Dawn of the Dead.
Or Army of the Dead.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I guess. Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess that's true. It could be either way. I wouldn't want it to be more Army of the Dead. But I guess that takes us back to when we did do Army of the Dead. And in a lot of ways, I felt like, well, this is IP that is in some ways safe in his hands because of what he did with Dawn of the Dead, which for me anyway is the next one on my list. Above, I pretty much like every film from here up on the list.
I would agree.
So it's just a question of ranking, but for me, I would put Dawn of the Dead at the bottom of the list of his films that I enjoy. I like it. I think that it just lacks the gravitas of many of the others, and it is a little understyled, which some people might appreciate, but for me, I really like the stylistic nature of Snyder's, the rest of his catalog, and so for me, that's why I rank Dawn of the Dead where I did.
Yeah. You can definitely not tell that it is a Zack Snyder movie as you're watching it. And correct me if I'm wrong, was this his first feature-length movie? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. So, again, you can't feel it, but I still enjoy it. He clearly hadn't found who he was as a filmmaker yet. He was in the process of it. But I think he still put out a movie that I found a lot of enjoyment in. And it's been a few years since I've seen it, so I don't remember it too well. But I would agree with you. I do enjoy it. I just think it's not very Snyder.
Yeah. But, I mean, it's really interesting how he comes off of music video directing the same way that Fincher does, and even working with a few of the same individuals. And so he's got that like Fincher-esque story, and he does also hit the ground running with somebody else's IP that's been well worn, and it's his chance to take that on with Dawn of the Dead, much like Fincher did with Alien 3. But I think in both cases there's a bit of a stumble now in terms of where it ultimately takes the franchise. But I would argue that Dawn of the Dead turned out a lot better than Alien 3 did.
Yeah. So I actually have Dawn of the Dead one further up. So I have one below Dawn of the Dead. And I know you don't agree with this at all. For me, it's Sucker Punch. I've seen this movie 3 or 4 times now. First time with you. And again, it's enjoyable. I like this film. But it just doesn't quite capture my interest the way that the rest of his movies do. I think it's too stylized in a lot of ways. I think it's a little too weird for my liking. And I just don't know that it's ever resonated with me. I haven't ever watched that movie and thought that was really good. I've just thought that was fun.
Yeah, I love this film. I got to be honest. I really do. I go back to it constantly. It's arguably a guilty pleasure, but I have it ranked at 3 in his filmography. So I think you've got it way underappreciated. I'm glad you like it, though. I'm glad you're not a hater of it, but I think this movie gets way more hate than it deserves and is way better than a lot of his other films even. I love how it's completely encapsulated. I think he finds the perfect mix between the fantasy and the reality. He mixes in a really great soundtrack. We've got the extremely Snyder-esque action sequences across the board, and I think there's some pretty good performances. There are some over-the-top performances, yes. Everybody is chewing up the scenery, yes. But they know they're in a Snyder film. They know the assignment, and I think it works perfectly. And I will argue over and over again about how much I love this film. Now, having gone through the Snyder filmography with one of your sisters, this also ranks really high for her. And I don't know if that has to do with the subject matter and the themes. It probably does, but it really resonated with her as well. So for me, Sucker Punch is way higher up. It's number 3.
Yeah. Fair enough. Well, moving backwards a little bit then, what do you have above Dawn of the Dead?
For me, the next one is Batman v Superman, a film that I really like a lot, a film that I know I like more than most people. You and I are both on this. You've got it ranked higher. I think you and I basically have Sucker Punch and Batman v Superman almost flipped in our spots.
Yeah.
Not quite, I guess.
But almost.
But I think that Batman v Superman is a really good film. I enjoy it. We've talked about this a number of times already in the podcast, whether it was in relationship to Batman or other things. But I think it's great, and I really like the film a lot. I don't understand why it gets so much hate. I think it's a really great introduction to Wonder Woman. I think it's a really great introduction to a new Batman who surprised me at how much I liked him in. And I think that there are a few problems with the film, but not enough that I can't overlook them.
Yeah. Well, I have it in the 3 slot, like you mentioned. And we have talked about it before, and I have a feeling it'll continue to come up on this podcast because it's a movie that I could talk about often. And I used to talk about it a lot more because I would die on the hill that it was a masterpiece and that everybody else in the world was crazy.
Yeah.
I don't think it's quite a masterpiece, but I do think it is really good. And I think it is extremely overhated. People have valid issues with it. I can acknowledge that. For me, they're just not as big of issues. I take this as a take on the DC universe and not the definitive DC universe. And I think a lot of people are unable to do that. So when their Batman or their Superman doesn't act exactly how they do in the comics or their favorite comic run, they take a lot of issue with it. And I just say, look at it as an interpretation from Zack Snyder. I think the movie is stylistically beautiful. I think there are just so many shots in that movie that are worthy to be oil paintings. I think the action is amazing. We've talked about how he solves the Superman conundrum with Superman just being all-powerful. I think he absolutely introduces the most powerful Batman to date. We see that Batman just absolutely taking names in that warehouse scene. And yes, a lot of people hate the "Save Martha" line. Why did you say that name? And for me, I don't get the hate for the line. It works for me. It's, to me, Batman realizing and fully understanding for the first time that Superman is just like him. He is more human than he is alien, that he has a mother that he cares about and that he's trying to protect. I think it's severely misunderstood, the whole movie. Maybe one day I'll do like a 10-minute deep dive into why this is actually a great movie. I love it. I could talk about it forever, so you better cut me off.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Well, that brings us to what, our number 6 on the list.
Yeah.
And so we also vary pretty differently here.
Actually,
in
number
fact, you're
5.
Number 5. Okay, we're down to 5. At number 5 on the list, I have Justice League: The Snyder Cut. We've both ignored the other original theatrical release, obviously, as having his name more or less removed from it. I love the Snyder Cut. I watch it from time to time. I like how it is serialized in a way, and I think you can kind of take it in smaller chunks. It's a really good film, and I think it's amazing to see what could have been. I am super curious what might have happened with Justice League had Snyder been able to complete the film to his original vision, rather than have to retroactively go back and add and reshoot things and add scenes. But yeah, I have it, I guess, in the 5 slot, which is quite a bit lower than you. In fact, you and I have our 1 and our 5s flipped.
Yeah, we do.
Which is fascinating. So I guess it's good enough time as any to talk about that.
Yeah, I will touch on the Snyder Cut, Zack Snyder's Justice League, since we're talking about it. It's my number 1. I was on the release the Snyder Cut train from day one. Yeah, I believed this movie existed. I wanted to see it. I didn't know that we ever would, but I wanted it so badly. I was so excited when it was announced. I think it was just leagues and leagues better than the other movie that we got with Joss Whedon.
Yeah.
And hey, it's a little overindulgent. That movie, had he originally released it in theaters, would not have been 4 hours long or however long it is. It would have been much closer to 3 hours, more likely. So there's plenty in that movie. We would have got
a director's cut anyway.
Yeah, you're right. But there's plenty that should be cut out of that movie to tighten it up. But for what it is...
Out of the Snyder Cut?
Out of the Snyder Cut, yeah.
Yeah.
But for what it is, I think it's absolutely wonderful. And you mentioned reshoots. I don't know if you know this. The only thing he reshot after the fact was the whole last dream sequence. So one big scene from the movie, or like 5-minute scene from the movie, and then a few shots of Martian Manhunter as well. Everything else was already filmed. So it's really interesting that his movie existed. Like, he had all the footage for his movie already for the most part, right? Like, he had 99% of that movie filmed. And so it's really interesting that they felt the need to give us a different version. And I think his version is really phenomenal. I think the villains are so much better. I think our Superman is so much better. I think all of our characters act more like themselves. The fact that they basically cut Cyborg's entire arc out of the 2-hour cut, I think is criminal, as he actually ends up kind of being the heart and soul of this movie, which I am not even a Cyborg fan. I don't love Cyborg as a character, but I love him in this movie. I think it's phenomenal. I love rewatching this movie. And I'll just point one more thing out to you. Had this movie come out on time, it would have come out before Infinity War, which I think is really interesting because we get our introduction to Darkseid. We get the Flash time traveling back in time. He's setting up this universe that I think is actually interesting enough to almost combat Marvel at the time. And I think had it come out original to plan, I think we could have lived in a really interesting time where DC might have slowly been catching up to Marvel in that sense.
Well, from that perspective, it felt like they were rushing it, and that's why. Like we discussed in the last couple episodes how well Marvel earned everything related to Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, and ultimately landed that plane. I believe that DC would have benefited from a little slower burn. I don't know that they wanted to do that, but they definitely wanted to chase Marvel. It was an arms race.
Yeah.
And the fact that it would have come out ahead of Infinity War, I think, personally was problematic to me. And I think you see that sense of urgency that they had as they rushed it to get the non-Snyder version out, and thus the backlash on that version.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. I agree. I think it's kind of a double-edged sword, but we
Yeah.
got it when we got it, and I loved it. And I think it's my favorite movie of his, even though I don't think it's perfect. But
So it's interesting that you have it there and I've got it in the 5 slot, but we have the reverse with your number 5 and my number 1
yeah,
as well. Do you want to start that off and then I'll jump in?
yeah, Watchmen. I have seen this story play out in a few different forms and mediums, and I think the story of the Watchmen is a very interesting one. I think a lot of people feel that Zack Snyder missed the point. I don't know that he did. I think he tells a very compelling story, and I don't have anything bad to say about this movie. I really enjoy it. I think it's very good. It's just kind of heavy, so I don't revisit it as often as some of the other ones. I don't think it has enough in it to excite me and like itch my brain, make me want to watch it again often.
Yeah.
But whenever I do revisit it, I'm often reminded like this is a really great movie.
I love this world. I read the comic, the graphic novel originally. I have enjoyed a few different animated versions of this. I really appreciated the HBO television series about this, but I do think that Snyder nailed it with this film, and I see it as a really great adaptation. I don't think he missed the point at all. I think it's there. I think that though by providing the Snyder-esque action sequences, it might take away a little bit from some people's perspective on his storytelling. But I don't think he missed the point at all, and I will go back to this over and over again. I think it is his best film without doubt, and I think it's a beautiful and really powerful film. Yes, it's heavy, but I think it really captures the essence of the graphic novel in a way that is really difficult to do. This is not an easy graphic novel to adapt.
Not at all.
This adaptation, it was always going to be really difficult. There are aspects of the graphic novel that I would say when I read through it, I say to myself, this makes no sense. Like, how could this translate outside of a graphic novel to a film? I think that Snyder made some good choices in terms of how to interpret the ideas behind what the graphic novel was attempting to do, but to make them more palatable and understandable for the film medium.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. It's very good. Now, in our 4 slot, we agree. We both have Man of Steel in the 4 slot for our Snyder ranking. I'll start us off. I think this movie is just really good. I distinctly remember the trailer or the teaser trailer for this movie coming out. And I don't remember exactly what year, like 2012, 2011, something like that. So I was on the younger side, and I remember you seeing that Christopher Nolan was producing it.
Yeah.
And you'd tell, and I'm like, Superman. And you're like, yeah, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to watch that one, dude. Because you're thinking Zack Snyder and Christopher Nolan and my 11-year-old son. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I was definitely worried that he was going to take it in an adult way. Well, let me just say, worried on your behalf, but also kind of excited as well. So to see that pedigree as with Nolan being involved in it, I think, and being a writer on it, I think has made me excited about it. But also, yeah, I definitely thought it might not be appropriate for my 11-year-old at the time.
Yeah, I mean, Zack Snyder interprets Superman in a really interesting way to me. A lot of people don't like it. They see it as too grim. I don't think it's grim. I think it's pretty realistic to our world, which I understand. Some people go to these kinds of movies for escapism. But I think he took Superman and he put him in our world and recognized that if Superman existed in our world, we would look at him as this godlike figure and also this weapon of mass destruction. Somebody who could, if he wanted to, kill us all. And I think that just opens up a lot of interesting doors. And I think Zack Snyder just did really well with finding these interesting places to take this character and this almost philosophical question of what would this actually look like. And for me, that's why this movie is so good. And on top of that, Henry Cavill as Superman is just one of the best castings ever, in my opinion. He was born to play this character, and I wish he got to play it longer.
He's very good in it. I had obviously had zero appreciation of him. I had no history or baggage with him at all coming into this. But I think he was a fantastic Superman. I agree with everything you just said. I think, as we've talked about, it really goes a long way towards solving that Superman conundrum, which is by addressing it. And so many other versions of what we've seen don't want to address that conundrum. And I think that they get away with it if it's, if it's superheroes in underoos running around, in their pajamas and looking like comic style characters. That works on the pages. That works with a certain from a certain sensibility. But I don't think it works in modern cinema. It's one of the reasons I'm a little concerned about the James Gunn film coming out. But we'll see. I'm gonna trust him. I know he's done a really good job of finding the right tone in most of his films. But I think that the Snyder tone was a really refreshing reintroduction to a character, much the same way that both Nolan and Tim Burton in their specific times reinterpreted Batman.
Yeah.
And so I'm down. Yeah, I have it as 4. I think it's a really good film, and I don't understand the hate for it either.
And on top of that, Hans Zimmer delivers a Superman score that I think is just phenomenal, and although it doesn't quite reach the same level of icon that the original
The John Williams score?
Yeah, exactly. That's just forever going to be the Superman score, but Hans Zimmer really stepped up to the plate and delivered us a score that I listen to regularly. It gets me so pumped up and makes me want to work out so I can look like Superman.
I feel like I need to investigate this more, but I have heard on repeated occasions that Hans Zimmer is to film scores what sort of a film score factory might be. That he is, like, when you see Hans Zimmer's name on something, it's not necessarily Hans Zimmer. It's like the Hans Zimmer team, that he has like dozens and dozens of composers that work for him. This could be total bullcrap that I just am making up, but I'm not making up. I'm repeating something that I've heard on multiple occasions.
Yeah.
Whereas other composers are, obviously they have teams, but they are true composers. But I've heard that Zimmer is like a film score incorporated.
Yeah, don't say those words to me.
You just don't believe him?
Regardless, maybe we'll do a little research, but I think he is easily the greatest composer of today. There's a few close ones, but he's phenomenal.
Of today?
At least.
How do you define that? Because now we're going down a rabbit hole. I don't know how anybody doesn't point at John Williams as being the end-all, be-all.
Yeah, I mean, John Williams is amazing, but I'd put him more as the composer yesterday.
Okay, I mean, I get it. I mean, he's like 300 years old now, but there's no one.
He's
with
the best
that
to ever
influence.
do it. He's the best to ever do it. But I will say, and maybe this speaks to your point a little bit, when you are listening or when you are watching a movie, you can tell that John Williams scored that movie. A lot of his scores sound very similar. And as somebody who, for several years, like through my middle school and high school years, listened to pretty much nothing but film scores, it's very similar. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is something to point out. And
it has a style.
Yeah, he has a very clear style, and he also has very specific instruments that he likes to play in very specific ways. And I feel like Zimmer offers a much wider range. But maybe that proves your point a little bit, that maybe there's a more of a team on one side, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I think Williams has a style. I think Elfman has a recognizable style. I think Trent Reznor in today's world has a really recognizable style in terms of film scores. I definitely struggle more to identify a Horner or a Zimmer score. Because I don't think it is as specifically stylized as some of these others that have existed and been masters in the craft.
Yeah, I'm with you. Anyways.
Okay, so we agree at 4. At 3, I had Sucker Punch, which we've already covered. At 3, you have Batman v Superman, which we covered. Is there anything you want to tack onto that?
No, I'm good. We'll talk about it more in the future.
Okay, so that brings us to our number 2 choice, which we both agree on, which is 300.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What can you even say about this movie other than it is Zack Snyder at full Zack Snyder? He's completely indulging himself in this movie, and in a way for me that just works so well. This was one of the first Zack Snyder movies that I saw knowing that it was Zack Snyder. And again, I talked earlier about Batman v Superman.
Did you circle back to it later? You didn't see it in 2006. You'd have been too young.
Yeah, I would have been 5 years old. 5 or 6 years old.
Okay, 6 years old, yeah.
Like I said about Batman v Superman, with just so many of the shots being just wonderful pieces of art, it's the same thing in this movie. He uses the slow-mo. He uses all his tricks. You know, he's fully realized Zack Snyder, and it's a beautiful movie visually. Just so many great camera shots, and on top of that, just the most testosterone-filled men killing people. It's an absolute blast. So many lines that you just want to like quote while screaming and then kick somebody down into a pit. It's a great movie. It is a man's movie for sure.
When I saw 300, the first thing that I thought was that I'd never seen a comic book adaptation film that still felt like a comic book while I was watching it.
Right.
And I think that he recaptures that to a certain extent in Watchmen. I think he recaptures that in Sucker Punch. I think to an extent he recaptures that in his DC films as well, and that's what people don't like about it. And I think that's ironic because those were comic books. They came from that style, and I think he brings that same sensibility.
Right.
I almost wish he'd have taken it a step further and gone even more toward the direction of 300 or Watchmen in his adaptation of the DC films. I would have been down for it. But when you watch this film, you can see, I see the cells. I see my eyes going from one cell to another cell and moving around. And the way that he brings it together, he holds slow motion on certain things, and for all the people that hate it, when I see that, what I see is my eyes looking at a cell in a graphic novel and it coming to life for me in my imagination. I see that as a really great interpretation of my imagination on the screen. So I really like 300. I think it's a seminal film. I think it was a game changer. I think that many other directors tried to imitate that. And I think that that's another reason why people started to give a backlash to Snyder, was because his super unique style was starting to get imitated in ways that was wearing people out.
Yeah, he changed the game, and then there were cheap imitations afterwards, just not as good. But I agree with you. This, like you said, there might actually be like comic book panels in this movie. There might actually be that. It is visually absolutely gorgeous in that aspect, and I completely agree. It just makes you feel like you are watching a comic book unfold right before your eyes. It's incredible. I love that movie. It is. I think it's a classic. Honestly, at this point, I think it's going to be looked back on for a very long time as an important movie.
I couldn't agree more. Well, that brings us to our number one picks, which we've definitely already covered. Justice League Snyder Cut is your number one, and Watchmen's mine. Let's finish up this conversation. You have any final thoughts on the Snyder Cut of Justice League that we haven't already discussed at your number one slot?
I'm glad it exists. I absolutely love it. I love that it's digestible in portions, like you mentioned, so you don't necessarily have to make a 4-hour commitment. I think the CGI is done really well. I think the villains all get an upgrade. I think the storytelling is just far superior than the 2-hour watered down version. And so I'm glad it exists. I will regularly rewatch it, and I will regularly imagine what might have been had this universe continued.
You know, it's interesting that the Whedon version was so poorly received and is obviously not a good film, but there are moments in it that I still really like. And in some cases, there are moments that Snyder specifically changed. And I'm thinking of the Aquaman introduction, for example. There are aspects of the way that Whedon cut that together, music that he used, things like that I quite enjoyed. I also enjoyed Snyder's version as well, but I think that the Whedon version, had it been purely Whedon, it would have been okay. It could have been okay, but the fact that it was sort of pieced together from somebody else's work, and it was a question of like finding a total tone shift. That's sort of what the issue was. And interestingly enough, we're going to talk about Whedon a little bit more in a few minutes, unrelated to this topic. But I'm curious, like, what could have been in that film.
Either way.
Yeah. Also, the last thing I would want to add about this film is, for me, it is the product of a very specific moment, and that was that COVID period where we were all really starved for content in 2021, and so for me, like, the Snyder Cut of the Justice League and The Last Dance sort of sit in this really weird capsule for me, where when I love to watch them. They mean a lot to me because they were examples of really great quality content that we had been looking for a long time, and we were being starved for, and we needed something to be able to talk about. We needed a shared community experience. We needed a water cooler moment that we couldn't have because we couldn't be next to people and talking to people at that time. And so for that reason, the Snyder Cut and The Last Dance, both that came out roughly around the same period of time, are both really special to me, and I like to go back to them, and they're comfort food at this point for me.
Yeah. I'm with you there.
Yeah.
Well,
that wraps up.
Yeah. Go ahead.
That wraps up our conversation on Zack Snyder. And our ranking of his films. We'll come back and revisit once we have an opportunity to see some Twilight of the Gods and any number of 15 other projects that he has in the works.
I'm pretty sure Twilight of the Gods, by the way, is an animated show that has already come out.
Oh, did it really? Okay, so I'm dumb. Yeah, you're right. It has already come out. So we're not gonna cover that. And feel free to send your thoughts directly to our Instagram direct messages on that one.
Yeah.
All right, we will discuss later when something else comes out.
Something else.
Since I haven't seen Twilight.
Planet of the Dead.
Yeah. Homework.
Anyways, yeah, homework.
We had some homework last week. Did you complete your assignment, son?
I completed my assignment like a good student.
Good.
A good Padawan. Good. Did you?
Good. I did. I completed my assignment with glee, I might add.
Good.
So do you want to go first? What was your assignment and what did you think?
Yeah, you had me watch Zero Effect. And right off the bat, you can read my review in Letterboxd if you would like, linked in all of our platforms. But I thought it was a really great recommendation. I enjoyed it the whole time. Unfortunately, I broke it up into 2 viewings because I fell asleep once, very tired. But I love Sherlock. I love mysteries. And, man, if that was not just a complete, well, I was going to say ripoff, but it's in no way a ripoff, but an interpretation of Sherlock Holmes. Yeah. In every way. He has his Watson. He even has his, I'm forgetting her name now, but the lady that he's always enthralled with.
Yes.
Irene.
Woman.
Irene
Yeah.
Adler.
Yeah.
This movie is paying homage to Sherlock in some really fun ways, even with his addictions and his hubris and all of these things. I thought it was very well done. I thought it had a really great lead performance and a mystery that was very intriguing. I can absolutely see this one being a regular rewatch for me.
Good. I'm really glad you like it. I love this film. I think it is like number 1, number 2 on my underrated unknown film list of films that almost no one that I talk to has actually seen.
Yeah.
But it's really well done. I love the way that it's put together. I like the performances. The script is great. I think it's a really fantastic debut by Jake Kasdan as a director. And I'm really glad you like it. I think Ben Stiller is absolutely hilarious in this film as the reluctant Watson-esque character. But yeah, it's great. I'm really glad you liked it. I had a feeling you would. Okay, good. My homework assignment was The King on Netflix, starring Timothée Chalamet and many, many others. and I really liked this as well. You can also read my review, but I didn't realize when you told me about it that it was a Henry V, a Henry V biopic,
Right.
of sorts. I only really had much knowledge of Henry V from the Shakespeare play, and which I have seen multiple adaptations of and have really enjoyed, and actually happens to be one of my favorite of Shakespeare's histories. So when I realized that's what I was watching, I got even more excited because I thought, okay, this will be fun. I want to see a really great, like, action-packed retelling of the Henry V story. There were a lot of really interesting parallels between that and Shakespeare's masterpiece. I think that Chalamet showed a lot of really early promise. He'd obviously done some good films before this, but this is really meant to, in some ways, be a star-making performance. I don't know that it's peak Chalamet necessarily. I think you could see a little bit of the stitching on the sides in his performance at times, but it was a good performance. I think I was most impressed with Joel Edgerton, to be honest. The fact that he was a writer and producer and an actor in this film, and I think it is a Edgerton performance unlike any that we've ever seen before. I think it's really showed me some range that I didn't realize he had, and I liked it quite a bit.
He's almost unrecognizable.
Yeah, in some ways, and things like his accent and other I really liked him as a character, as Falstaff. And was impressed that this was something that he had penned himself.
So you enjoyed your homework.
I did. Great recommendation, and I appreciate it. And as we go into next week's homework, I hope that we've got some good stuff on the horizon. What are you assigning me this week?
This week, I want you to watch The Peanut Butter Falcon. This is starring Shia LaBeouf and Dakota Johnson, and a lead performance that I'm actually blanking on the name. It's a really great movie. For me, it's become a feel-good comfort movie. I watched it for the first time probably 3 years ago, and I was grinning the whole time. I had an absolute blast with it. Again, I think I appreciate this movie more than most others. But like I said, it's just become a comfort movie for me. It just makes me laugh. Even though it's not necessarily specifically a comedy, it's just going to make you feel good. So I think you'll enjoy it. I'm surprised you haven't seen it yet, but I can't wait to hear about it next week.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It looks like it's available for me on Netflix, so I'm going to be jumping on that. Shia LaBeouf, Dakota Johnson, looks really interesting. I'm certainly familiar with its existence, but definitely never got around to seeing it. So I'm gonna jump into that with some excitement.
I hope you like it.
I've got one for you. We're gonna stick with sci-fi for you because I know that you like that a lot. But we're gonna go into the Whedon world. I'm gonna ask you to watch Serenity. If you don't know, Serenity is a film follow-up to the one season that Whedon had on a show called Firefly. And Firefly is a really great show. I'd love it if you could watch that, but there's like 14 episodes. And so I don't really expect you to jump into that as homework assignment in 1 week. But I think that the film is really good as a standalone on its own, and I think it will inspire you to want to go back and watch Firefly as on your own. As almost as if it's just a prequel to the film, which it I guess would be, except that it came out first.
So you don't feel like I would need to watch like a recap video or anything beforehand? It stands alone?
No, I think it stands alone. In fact, I don't want you to watch a recap. I want you to go into it and watch it alone. I think that Whedon did a good job of that. I think he explains the things that you would have known had you watched the show first. Okay. He explains it well enough and succinctly enough that a first-time visitor to this world will be totally comfortable and survive.
Wonderful.
And then you'll want to dive deeper and go back and watch the show again. So very Whedon-esque. We've got Nathan Fillion, we've got Gina Torres, we've got Alan. How will we say his last name? I'm always forgetting how to say his last name. Tudyk, or from from this upcoming season of Andor as well. Okay. Morena Baccarin. It's a really great cast, and I think you're going to find the tone fun. It has a sort of Avengers esque tone to it.
Yeah, he's got a good fun tone. I'm looking forward to it. I love sci-fi.
Yeah. So, all right. Serenity for you, a Peanut Butter Falcon for me. All right. So we've ranked, we've debated, we disagreed, but not about who shot first. Just another day in the galaxy.
So, whether you're Gen X, Gen Z, or somewhere lost in the timeline, please continue to listen, share, like, and subscribe to I Am Your Father, the podcast.
Until the next episode, remember that with great power comes a great second breakfast, and winter is also coming, so may the Force live long and prosper within you.
Because we can do this all day. Peace.